Thank you for joining us in this month's edition of the City Managers Forum. Today we'll have the opportunity for you to meet our new police chief, Don Sweger. But first, here is our superintendent of Guthrie Public Schools, Dr. Mike Simpson, with Chalk Talk.
Hello, I'm Mike Simpson, Superintendent of Guthrie Public Schools, and I'm happy to come to you today to talk about the bond issue that we're sending to the Guthrie voters in November of this 2014 school year. We've worked very hard to develop a plan that will allow our school district to move forward, and we've tried to prioritize some of our needs and work toward the things that we feel like our students need and what we hope the community can support. I'm going to take you through a presentation that I'm giving to many civic clubs along with our GPS staff and anyone else that wants to view it. And I hope it will be informative and will answer some of your questions that possibly you have about the bond issue that will come before the voters of Guthrie Public Schools on November 4th of 2014. First question is, why do we need this? And when you look at the history of Guthrie Public Schools and our bond issues that we've had, we have not passed a bond issue since February of 2005. That was for $4.855 million, and that passed with a 63% yes vote. And since then, we've had several that have failed. And along the way, those issues were for really good projects at times, but the community did not feel comfortable in supporting in the projects. If you'll remember, the issue that came before the voters in February of 2005 was to renovate Jelsma Stadium, and then it built on to Central Elementary with classrooms and Fogarty Elementary. Also, there were some maintenance buildings built. And since then, many of the projects have involved building a new school or renovating the junior high or looking at some of the other needs that the district had. And we look at our community and where we are with our students. We've had large growth in the last 2 or 3 years. And if you look at this chart here, these numbers are dating back to when the last bond issue was passed in 2005. And what you'll see if you look at the growth and when it occurred, and when we went flat with growth, you'll see that it kind of mirrors the economy in Logan County, and especially new housing starts. And with the housing that is being built in Logan County right now, we have to prepare for the future. And we've tried several times before to discuss this, but we really are in a position now where we've got to address some of those needs. And with the bond issue that we've got in November, we're going to get a start toward maintaining the buildings that we have so that the next bond issue that we could put before the voters could be whatever the Long Range Planning Committee and the Board of Education determines will address the needs of our growth. And I'm going to take you through several neighborhoods that are not in the city limits of Guthrie except for one, and what they looked like in 2005 and what they look like today. The first that I'm going to take you through is called Woodland Farms, and it's just north of Waterloo Road, and it is just west of Douglas Boulevard. You don't see it from I-35. You don't see it unless you are looking for the neighborhood. But this is what the neighborhood looked like in 2005, and this is what the neighborhood looks like today. Now we'll go to another neighborhood in the area. It's called Sweetwater Springs, and it is just east of Douglas Boulevard and south of Charter Oak. And you see what the neighborhood was starting to be built up in 2005. There's some new home starts there, and you can kind of see the development going on. And this is what that neighborhood looks like today in 2014. And these are all aerials taken off of Google Earth. So you can pull up Google Earth on your computer at home and you can see these, and they have a historical option there where you can look at how that neighborhood has grown. Sweetwater Springs in 2014. The next neighborhood we'll look at is Charter Oak Estates. This neighborhood is just north of Charter Oak and just east of where Sweetwater Springs is, about a mile a half a mile rather to the east of Douglas Boulevard. This is what it looked like in 2005. And this is what that neighborhood looks like today. And you'll notice that there are blue dots, and those blue dots represent students that are currently in our school district. They currently have a child that attends our school one of our schools. And again, all of these neighborhoods that we've looked at so far are outside the city limits of Guthrie, but inside the district boundary for Guthrie Public Schools. The next neighborhood, Triple Crown Meadows in 2005, and this neighborhood is located just east of Pine and just north of Seward Road. So we're getting a little bit closer to town, and you can see what the neighborhood looks like in 2005. It is just bare land. And today, that's what this neighborhood looks like. Then moving on, and this neighborhood is actually inside the city limits, and you'll see on the left of your screen a neighborhood called Mission Hills, and this is along Division south of Industrial. And on the west, or on the east side of Division, you'll see Pleasant Hills, which is an apartment complex. And that's what this neighborhood and the apartment complex looked like in 2005, and that's what it looks like today. One of the things, when I was hired as superintendent in March of 2012, I began driving some of these neighborhoods in the evenings so that I could see where the young kids were. And I can tell you, as the weather got good and families were out in the neighborhoods, I could tell that there were a lot of young kids in all of these neighborhoods. And I did that for personal reasons because I have young children, one that's in our school district now as a student and one that will be in the future. And I can tell you that I know we have more kids coming from these neighborhoods. So we look at funding options. We have three funds. We have a building fund, a general fund, and we have a sinking fund. The sinking fund is the money that is used to pay back bond issues, but since we don't have any current outstanding bond debt, we don't have a sinking fund presently. Now we'll look at our building fund, and what that amounts to is it is an annual tax from your property taxes as a patron, as a citizen that lives inside Guthrie Public Schools district boundaries. And those tax proceeds, by statute, we have to use those on buildings and certain equipment. They generate this last year approximately $640,000. And what we do with that money, we spend $275,000 a year on routine building maintenance costs, such as the wax for the floors, the cleaning supplies, the toilet paper, the paper towels, all the things it takes to run a building. And then we have about $75,000 to $100,000 we spend annually on major repairs, equipment needs, and special projects, such as the carpet that was put in the classrooms at Central this summer. And we tiled all of the classrooms and removed the original carpet from 1989 in Guess, the upper elementary school, last summer. That's where we get the money to do those kinds of upgrades. And then we have approximately $225,000 that remains in that fund that we try to carry over and keep in there for contingencies and other large projects. In case we have a chiller that goes down, or in case we have a boiler that goes out, or something that is a large cost item. Generally, we spend what we take in this fund, and it turns into a revolving fund, but we try to keep that money there because that is our savings account. It's our safety net for our facilities. This is a 5-year snapshot of the proceeds from our building fund. It has been talked about that we could simply save money to build an elementary school or save money to do the things that we need to do. Well, even if you didn't take out for all of the things that we do, the $275,000 a year that we do out of that fund, if you left all of that and took that out of general fund, we still only capture over 5 years about $3 million. And it takes about $10 to $12 million as the last projections to build an elementary school. So that's the reason that we seek bond issues to do major work. Then let's get to the general fund. In a general fund for a school district, we spend about 88% of that fund on salaries for our staff. And that is pretty typical. That's actually a little less than most school districts spend on the out of their general fund on that. And we, by law, cannot use the general fund to fund major capital projects, such as building schools. Now, looking at bond issues. They require a supermajority to pass. In other words, 60% of the voters have to vote yes on it for the vote to pass. And if it's funded through your property taxes as a property owner, we can bond up to 10% of the value of all taxable property within the district, which is approximately $12.6 million in our school district today. And we can vote to approve bonds in excess of 10%, but we cannot issue them until the debt is below 10%. The practical example that I use is if you had a credit card and your spending limit on that credit card was at $12.6 million, then we could spend more with one vote, but we would have to wait until we paid off the debt that we had. In other words, $12.6 million is the most we could go into debt, and then when we pay some of that off, we could go ahead and authorize for more work. The taxation level is figured in mills, which is 1/10 of 1 penny. And we've worked hard to consider a millage level to sustain until the long-range plan has been completed or revised, allowing the level taxation. In other words, keeping your property tax at a certain level until we get all of the work done that we feel like we need. And the target that the Board of Education and our Long-Range Planning Committee has developed is 20 mills. We've got to balance what the community will support with what the school district can use to accomplish the goals that we have for to develop our facilities and make them more sustainable for the long-range health of the district. There are 3 types of bond issues. The general obligation bond issue, and that's bonds that are voted and sold and issued on their full face amount. That's what we're talking about with the issue that we have on November 4th. We will have a general obligation bond issue, and those votes, once we vote on that, if it's approved by the voters, then we would sell those bonds and we would generate that money and begin the work, and the target for payoff of that $2.4 million bond issue is 24 months or 2 years. You can do a series bond issue. In other words, you vote one time and you might authorize, let's say, $25 million. But we would never be, again, just like I described earlier, we would never be more than $12.6 million in debt. And that figure can move based on the net assessed valuation that the county assessor develops for our school district each year. The next type is a lease purchase or lease revenue bond issues. Guthrie has proposed one of these in the past, and it was soundly defeated by the voters. Why do people do this? School districts such as Mustang, Yukon, Jinx, Deer Creek, they have chosen to explore this type of bond issue, and it captures a lot of money up front so that you can try to hedge against construction inflation. We're not talking about that in this bond issue. We are not proposing that, but I don't want the voters to be confused and think that this is the same thing, that even though that was voted on in 2010. That, again, is not part of this bond election. And when you look at where we are as a school district, and these are our surrounding school districts that border our Guthrie Public Schools. Our current sinking fund or millage rate is at 0, and it's been there since 2012. You'll see at the top, Deer Creek and Edmond Public Schools are at 33 and 23, and then several that come down from that. But we are currently by far the lowest because we have no outstanding debt. And if we seek a 20 mil levy, it would still put us below the districts that I have above that I say are comparable in makeup. And why I say those are comparable districts in makeup is because they are all growing districts that we have above us, just like we are a growing district. And so we're still going to be below the school districts that are growing with their student population. And the answer to the question that many people are going to ask is, will my taxes go up? And the answer is yes, they will go up. And this is how much. If you have a house that's assessed at $100,000 in value, we're going to estimate your taxes will go up $1,664 per month, and that is if you have a mortgage and an escrow account. And if you pay annually to the county treasurer, your taxes would go up approximately $200. If your house is valued at $150,000, we estimate the taxes will increase $2,580 per month, or just a little over $300 per year. The target of increase of 20 mills is well below Edmond and Deer Creek. And one of the things that I mention is, I mention that because their community has invested in their growth, and those districts are growing at a faster rate, but as we border their districts, the potential is there for us to begin seeing growth at the same or similar rate to what those districts are, and we have to be prepared. Now, the next part of this that's a key element is this is below the tax burden placed on the Guthrie patrons in the last successful bond issue. When we renovated Jelsma Stadium, built onto Central and built onto Fogarty Elementaries, the tax burden was higher than what we're talking about with this bond issue. And when we talk about where our school district is today, we have school buildings that are in varied degrees of need, from desperate to cosmetic renovation. We have some buildings that are in pretty good shape. We need to do a little bit of work to them. We have some that need a lot of work. We have recently purchased used buses that are only a year old so that we can take out the most unreliable buses in our fleet. And by doing that, we were able to purchase more buses than we could had we purchased them new. And we're trying to put our transportation department on a replacement schedule so that we don't have all buses of the same age, and we can rotate buses through our fleet. Remember that our technology that we place in the classrooms, we purchase currently from Edmond Public Schools when they have deemed them to be obsolete. Again, we've seen that our enrollment continues to increase, and while the city population is stable, the population in the county continues to grow, and you've seen that with the aerials of the neighborhoods that we've had grow since the last successful bond issue. We now have more students that live outside the city limits than live inside the city limits, and that is it's about almost a 2-to-1 ratio that live outside the city limits. We've been making some purchases of major items such as buses and cafeteria equipment on lease purchase agreements, and that's costing the district more money because we're having to pay interest on those purchases. And right now, construction pricing and interest rates for general obligation bonds are definitely in favor of our school district. Most general obligation bonds, the interest rate on them is less than 1%, and that is very favorable for the school district right now. So what are we going to do with the money? Well, at Central Elementary, which was built in 1929, and we built onto it in 2006, and just a little tidbit about Central, the current parking lot that we have, we don't actually own that. Homeland allows us to use it, and we're very, very thankful to them for continuing to work with us on that. We want to replace the roof on the main portion of the building. We cannot find record of a time that roof was replaced. It has been patched several times but needs work. We want to replace the windows. They are still single pane windows, and we believe that putting energy efficient windows in that building will help take it further with its life. And then we want to tuck point the exterior, which is routine work for a building of this age. And when water gets inside that brick and freezes and then thaws, it has an ability to pop the brick, and we want to take care of the outside of this building because we feel like this is a quality building, and we want to show the community that we are taking good care of it. And we want to replace the classroom heating and AC units. We put those in 1996, and they are at the end of their life. That's going to cost around $682,000. That's the estimate from our architects. At Fogarty Elementary, We want to, and again, that building was built in 1936. We put an addition there in 2006, similar to Central. And with that building, we want to replace the roof on the main portion of the building, which was last replaced in 1996. That's going to cost, that's an estimated cost of $360,000. At Guthrie Upper Elementary, we, again, that's our newest building in the district, built in 1989, and we want to replace the roof. It's the original roof that when the building was built in 1989. We've repaired it at times, but it's at the end of its life. And because of the size of the building and the footprint of the roof, the estimated cost is $945,000, almost $1 million for that roof. The next thing that we want to do is we want every teacher in Guthrie Public Schools to have a laptop computer. Most districts do this and have been doing it for many years. That's something that our teachers have not had the luxury of having, so that they can do work at home. If they do work at home on a computer, it's their own personal computer. And we want to allow our teachers to have some of the same benefits to allow them to do their magical work, and just like other school districts. That estimated cost is around $300,000. The next thing that we want to do is we want to repair the high school track. Track was replaced in 1996, and we completely resurfaced the track in 2005. Our junior high and senior high athletes use the track, but if you go up there in the evenings, you're going to see that many community members use the track as well. And we're not resurfacing it. We're repairing the holes and spots in it that need repairing, and we're going to restripe it. And you can kind of see one of the holes that are fairly typical of the first lane in this picture. The estimated cost there is $75,000. So you'll see, here's a rundown of the entire summary of the estimates that we have to get to $2.4 million. And you'll notice that we're trying to take care of our roofs and take care of the investment that we have in the buildings that we currently have in Guthrie Public Schools. And the election is November 4th, 2014. It's for $2.4 million. It's been my pleasure bringing this to you today, and if you have questions, we have many people that we're trying to get out to speak to, and feel free to ask one of them. Ask our staff members. They've had this presentation, they've viewed this presentation as well. Feel free to reach out to any of us, myself included, if you have questions about this bond issue. This is a start to what we need to do for Guthrie Public Schools. And we want you to help us bring Guthrie Public Schools along, help us with our growth, and help us to maintain the great facilities that we have. Thank you so much for your attention and for viewing this presentation. I'm Mike Simpson, Superintendent of Guthrie Public Schools. Thanks for watching.
Hi there. We're here with the new City of Guthrie Police Chief, Don Sweger. Chief Sweger, tell us where you came from and a little bit about your law enforcement career.
I've been in law enforcement since 1994. I started out as a reserve police officer in a little bitty town of about 900 people. Went full-time at a sheriff's office and worked there for about 10 years. Then I went to the city of Bristow, and I worked there for almost 10 years before I came to work for the city of Guthrie. I grew up in Creek County. I have a wife I've been married to for 18 years. I have a daughter who's a senior in high school. We have an adopted daughter who's going to school right now at Tulsa Community College. She attended Northeastern State University at Tahlequah for a while on a softball scholarship, and then we've had one or two other foster kids that we've taken in from time to time from DHS. The big thing I would like the community to know about me is that one of the ways that I hope to get the police department changed a little bit is to get it tied back into the community a lot more. One of the big problems that I've I've had people approach me about in the little bit of time that I've been here is the disconnect between the police department and the community. Not that the police department is necessarily bad, but that they've withdrawn, I guess, from the community, and that the public, since we are public servants, would like to see us more involved, more active within the community, so that they know what's going on, and that they feel like they know the officers, they're more comfortable with the officers. So you're going to see some changes within the department that bring us closer to the community, more tied into the community, more active in the community. I believe that my role as the police chief is to facilitate the department's ties into the community. I am the ambassador, if you will, between the department and every facet of the community, whether it's the churches or the schools or Chamber of Commerce, the neighborhood associations, or whatever. While I have officers that'll be out there every day doing, all kinds of duties for the community, all too often, it's hard to approach an officer that they see every day because people are sometimes afraid of making enemies. We can smooth things over, get a misunderstanding ironed out, and the community's happier, the officers are happier, and everybody's more productive and happy. So.
That's great. Do you think, looking back over your years in law enforcement, is there one event that kind of crafted your leadership style as a police chief now?
I tell myself all the time is I never want to forget where I came from. Mm-hmm. I started out as an unpaid reserve, and I remember how I felt when the paid guys wanted us to do all the work with no appreciation, no money, no anything like that. And I've come a long way since then, but I don't want to forget about the smallest guy or girl on the street, in dispatch, animal control, any position that's underneath me. I like to remember birthdays, and I like to remember special events in their family lives, because this is a hard job. Chances are high that we make 50% of the people involved mad in one way or the other. And it really takes a toll on the officers or the personnel involved. So I feel it's incumbent upon me to try to make life back at the office a little bit more bearable, a little bit more structured, and a little bit more friendly. Not so people can get away with everything, but just bearable.
Right.
Fair.
So again, looking back a little bit, what would you say is one of your funniest experiences that you've had?
Yeah, probably one of the best funny ones is when we got a call to Pizza Hut one time about a suspicious man, and by the time we got there, there was a fully naked man who was clearly strung out on methamphetamine, making pizzas. Back behind the counter, and then he didn't want to come peacefully, so we had to wrestle him to the ground amid the flour and the dough and the pizza sauce. That cost the department quite a few uniforms, because pizza sauce just doesn't come out. Right. And then there's some really bad and down things about law enforcement, but you can take all that and fill a teacup with it. The good stuff, where you get to help people, and the funny stuff, and the camaraderie. You can fill 1,055-gallon drums with it, and that's what makes it all worthwhile. The officers tend to forget that from time to time, because the little teacup full of bad stuff tends to overwhelm them, just like most people in life. But it's a career and a profession. I know I wouldn't trade for anything else, and I know most of the people that have been in for any amount of time wouldn't either. They truly love to serve their communities. That's what it's about.
Fantastic. Well, we're extremely happy that you're here, and
I am happy to be here.
Getting familiar with the Guthrie community, and to the Guthrie community, please welcome your new police chief, Don Sweger.
Come see me.
Thanks again for joining us in this month's edition of the City Managers Forum.